Hey, David. Great to be on today's podcast. Looking forward to talking about lead generation and LinkedIn scraping.
Mm. Yeah, cool. Let's do it. What do you want to know? Where should we start?
Let's dive right in. I'm curious about your journey into LinkedIn automation for lead generation. What initially sparked your interest in this space? And what were some of the early challenges you encountered when trying to automate LinkedIn outreach?
Yeah, so this is like back in 2019. I was part of a lead gen agency, and a big part of that work was validating profiles against LinkedIn because that was kind of like the B2B source of truth. Doing it manually, I felt like I could do better work, so I found a way to automate myself out of that job. And that actually started my journey on, creating enrich B2B and other tools that then managed to get and validate, LinkedIn data at scale, which would then go out and, you could go and reuse the data to create better messaging and automate your outreach on there. So, it really was born from a frustration of a lot of LinkedIn is manual, and I knew that there was ways to get the data out of the platform to be able to enrich CRMs and all this kind of stuff. So, that was kind of like my start. And I think really the frustration I had was without being able to extract the data, you were limited, very, very limited in terms of your outreach potential. It was to create campaigns, let's say. But now with all the tools that we've built internally, very easy to go and, build a very direct list of people who share interests with where your products align, and going out and reach out to them with very specific messaging based on what they've interacted with, such as their likes and their comments, and make a genuine connection on the first instance.
That's fascinating. You essentially automated yourself out of a job because you saw a better way to handle the data. When you talk about creating more genuine connections through automation, what's your approach to balancing scale with personalization? How do you ensure that automated outreach doesn't come across as spammy, but actually creates those meaningful first interactions?
Yeah, so like I said, the job is always to take the data out and then be able to work with it externally. And I think it's that mechanism of working with it externally that allows you to balance the amount of scale and automation with how personalized things can get. And so one of the things that I do is usually I'll always keep my campaign list small to start with to make sure the messaging hits. I'll manually eye the messages against the data as well to see if they seem like they're a good fit. Sometimes AI and LLMs will pull together references or pull together messages that you wouldn't really send. They might make some logical sense, or they might be a okay answer, but they aren't something I'd want to be associated with, or they're just too irrelevant. And you see this quite a lot. It's like, hey, I noticed you like this post on go-to-market motions. It's just like a very generic one. And then all of a sudden you come in with a specific, go-to-market pipeline engineering solution. It's as you would be you would be missing the mark. But I think really what I've always said is that the power of AI and like go-to-market is by creating underlying data that allows you to almost feel like you're reaching out, but you don't actually have to personalize it. So for example, if I have all this data on a company and I built the profile that they've got, 12 of their sales reps all enjoying clay.com or, Attio content, then I have a pretty good insight into like the type of tech that they're used to and they want to use. And so I can use that as a reference. Like, I know your sales team loves to try new tools and they experiment and they're really successful at, keeping with the times. Therefore, I thought it makes sense to connect on this other thing rather than just like, here's a CRM you could use instead. And I think that's that contextual awareness that AI can sometimes struggle with, but can probably be fixed with prompts and some, one or two shot prompt engineering exercises. So I think, circling it back, the way that you kind of, you just have to take care of how you are prompting AI and the data that you're feeding it to make sure that you are creating relevant messaging. And then second of all is always have a manual eye over it. Like there's a limited amount of attention in the world to some degree. And with AI, like the potential to message people has increased exponentially. It's like it's gonna be even more competitive to get people's attention. So you got to make sure that like message really hits and that you're offering what the data shows you what they want.
You've hit on something really important there. The idea that even with automation, there's still a need for human oversight and judgment.
Yeah.
I'm curious. Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt you there. You were agreeing, and I was about to ask, when you look at the entire lead generation process, where do you see AI automation creating the most value? Is it in the data gathering phase, the personalization of messages, or somewhere else in the workflow?
Yeah, probably capturing raw data and using that for market insights, to be honest with you. And what else? Yeah, I guess maybe taking that data and then creating features on the fly. I just don't see where else it can go. I think obviously gathering data is somewhat important, but that is less AI. That's more like infrastructure scraping. Analyzing data, yeah, that's obviously a massive one. But you know, lead generation is downstream from attention and goals, and I think that attention and goals are going to change massively with AI. So it's kind of hard to predict like where lead generation is going to go. But currently, I think that the main kind of use case is getting and analyzing data in the back end such that your campaigns stand out and that you have the best chance of meeting and prioritizing the best accounts possible. That's kind of how I see it.
That's a really thoughtful perspective. The idea that lead generation is downstream from attention and goals is particularly insightful. As AI continues to evolve, how do you see the relationship between data privacy concerns and LinkedIn automation changing? Are there ethical boundaries you've established in your approach to ensure you're respecting user privacy while still creating effective lead generation systems?
Yeah, I think if the data is publicly available and having a really solid privacy and cookies and data GDPR kind of process, then I think you're absolutely fine because this is publicly available and other people have access to it too. What you do with it is up to you. I think the boundaries you have to create is, are you logging into a system to gather the data that is as person aware that you can get this data are all considerations that we take into account when we're looking at scraping social data. And the general kind of feel is that on social media platforms, generally you want to be seen. So therefore the data being gathered is not an issue and how you use it is up to you. So that's kind of my stance on it. That's how we do it, at least at Moon Labs.
That makes sense. Focusing on publicly available data while maintaining proper compliance with privacy regulations. Looking ahead, what excites you most about the future of AI in lead generation? Are there emerging technologies or approaches you're keeping an eye on that could fundamentally change how businesses connect with potential clients?
Yeah, I mean, like, there's a couple of
Sorry,
things.
did I cut you off there?
No, not at all. So there's a couple of things. I think one is like, where does the UI go to? You see Salesforce, they're like investing in new companies where UI is sort of different. And I think that's an important thing. So I think, a salesperson having to click buttons to generate the right campaigns and to generate the right connections to be able to sell in and create conversations or relationships, probably a bit outdated now. I can imagine conversational agents or matching agents in the middle with LLM context awareness and full, open source data on each profile, each company is going to be massive. So I think that, there's going to be a matchmaking service that is efficiency focused where the game maybe cannot be gamed to some degree. I think that would be amazing because then you have this kind of completely fluid and based on evidence matchmaking service that can push projects in the right direction. Thought about that a little bit. Because at the moment, there's a trust barrier between what people say they can do and what people need done. And I think that AI and data will create visibility in that space where it wasn't there before. If you think about like finance and stuff, the reason there's so many more financial products has been around longer, obviously, but the availability of data and contracts and law made it so that trust was, easily accessed or much easier accessed. I think this will, I think this could be pushed into the kind of sales area as well, of exchanging goods rather than exchanging money or exchanging currency or getting currency, let's say. So, maybe there's that. I think secondary is like personal AI shopping. I think that's going to be huge. It will leak into B2B and B2C software as well. And then also like just products will change. Like we're seeing OpenAI, hire Johnny Ive and get them to design their own product. And I think that we've got this whole new sense of what the world's going to look like in the next 10 years. And software might just be, like a new HTTP protocol underneath everything that no one really interacts with. They just interact with the layers above it because the efficiency gains and the attention is somewhere else. And I think I keep coming back to this idea that like attention is the only fixed asset that actually exists in the world anymore, really, that we care about. And it is genuinely fixed. And I think that as we also become more mindful and emotional, we'll realize that our attention being focused everywhere apart from on ourselves or our experiences lends itself pretty against the advertisement and the kind of profit first capitalist structure that we have. So there's that too. So, I mean, whether I'm excited about it or not, I don't know, but I guess those are my kind of big overhanging macro views and questions that I have.
Wow, that's a really expansive vision you've shared. I'm particularly struck by your idea of an AI-powered matchmaking service that could fundamentally change how businesses connect, essentially removing the game aspect of lead generation and creating more authentic connections based on actual value alignment. Your point about the evolution of interfaces is fascinating too, moving beyond the traditional button-clicking CRM experience to something more conversational and intuitive. And the parallel you drew with financial services, where data availability created trust, seems like it could be transformative if applied to sales relationships. As we wrap up our conversation, what's one piece of advice you'd give to businesses that are just starting to explore AI for their lead generation efforts? Where should they begin?
Yeah, that's such a good question. So my first gut instinct is always to extract the data you have on your customers right now through LinkedIn conversations. You can export all your data easily through your CRM, through your Excels, your contracts. Just throw it all into one big bin. Get AI to have a look at it and draw some conclusions and draw some analysis on it. Practice with AI in terms of, annotating, collating, basically just getting it to access all your different documents and learn how AI can be asked different questions of these documents and where its limitations are, but assume its limitations won't exist much more. And think about, what might your customers be expecting from your industry, from your services now that AI is a new thing. But I think also secondary is like, go and. I think the main thing is go and get AI to play around with the data that you currently have, and also to draw up some ideas of what sales and marketing could look like in the future for you based on the data you have.
That's excellent advice. Starting with your existing data and using AI to extract insights and patterns that might not be immediately obvious. I love how you emphasized both the practical first steps and the forward-thinking aspect of reimagining what sales and marketing could become. David, this has been such an insightful conversation about lead generation, LinkedIn automation, and the future of AI in this space. Thank you for sharing your expertise and vision with us today. I think our listeners will walk away with some really valuable perspectives on how to approach this evolving landscape.
Awesome. Thank you so much. See you later.